All right, welcome everyone to our September 25th episode of MVP Office Hours. I am one of your pseudo-qualified co-hosts, joined today by Dale Ziegler and Joy Shutter-Telving. We also have a couple MVPs joining as well. We'll give some shout outs to them in a minute. But before we start, just want to go through the normal agenda, starting with top of the order here. As we all know, everything's virtual or more or less virtual, and so we're going to continue to update our slide deck, but all the links at the events or at the Salesforce events, community events or Salesforce events sites are up to date. There has been, I believe, and I'm hoping that the rest of the room can confirm that while Dreamforce has been canceled, it hasn't been canceled, but it might have been canceled, but it could have been canceled. There might be a virtual, there's a lot of weird messaging. Is that true? Or is there a definitive answer on what they're going to do for Dreamforce?
There's no official specific to Dreamforce. There was something about some Trailhead related community stuff going on, but no one has gone through and said Dreamforce is
right
from Salesforce.
I heard from nobody super official that public information is going to be released October 6th.
Oh, okay. We'll take that.
So. But don't quote me on that.
Public information about how we're reimagining it next year.
Well, it's recorded, so it's all out there now.
Yeah, forever and ever.
True. I'm not naming my source.
So actually, that's a good transition right there. So just a reminder to everyone on the call, like always, we do record these sessions. And so if you are not able to be recorded, or if there's a challenge with you being recorded, unfortunately, we have to ask you to drop off. But as we are recording, if you choose to share your screen to help support your questions, please make sure that everything is obfuscated or not business-centric PII type information. We don't want to have that recorded and have that come back to haunt you or us. Let's see here. What do we got next? Oops, wrong page. Hopefully you figured out that since you joined us that we moved our schedule around just a little bit for September and October, just to make sure that everything lines up well with the upcoming holidays and the release readiness and everything else. Normally it's the first and third Friday, and Portuguese is the last Thursday, and EMEA is the last Thursday of the month. You don't have to speak the language in question to join. Lots of people there to help. English is as important as all the other languages, and so they're sharing and translating as best they can. We're going to be shooting for the 9th of October for our next office hours meeting, and the invites are already updated, I believe, right, Dale?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Okay,
I'll check. No, it's a recurring series. As soon as we close this, the next one will be up and going.
Awesome. And then lastly, normal Zoom virtual stuff. You're probably sick of hearing this because we're all in Zoom all the time, but please stay on mute. But that doesn't mean that you can't go off mute to help with the questions. Raise your hand or post in the chat if you have a question. Feel free to share if necessary, and all the links and commentary and posts and everything that goes into the chat will be added to the deck. So we'll all work together to get this thing hammered out. So with that, MVPs, if we could just get a quick, head count for who's on to help us with today's little call. As I like to offer, we're all MVPs at heart. So, but some of us have a sticker by our picture too. So welcome everyone for joining us. And with that, why don't we go ahead and get started. Dale, I know you said earlier we had a question to start off the chat, and we had one from Gmail that we wanted to jump to, and then we'll go from there.
So let's go with Andrea first, because she emailed us a couple of days ago, and then we'll do Brittany after Andrea. So Andrea, go for it.
Okay. So need to have some fun with flow, in that we are tracking on the account page, tracking the competitor products that customers use. And we're across, we offer a lot of things. And so we track different systems. We're tracking what's their payroll system, their HR, their whatever. There's 14 of them. In my perfect world, it's already a lookup to a product record. In my perfect world, when that value is changed, Salesforce will automatically create a record related to the account. It basically track field history without tracking field history because we need it for longer than 18 months. But it's one object, and I want to say if the payroll field is updated, when you create this new record, have the pick list value be payroll and pull in this value to the related record. And I'm guessing I could do this with a super gnarly bunch of decisions, but there's 14 of them. So I was hoping there was some better way to do it.
So can I offer something super simple before smarter people than me get into probably the more gnarly necessary answer that I just thought about? So you mentioned field history tracking and the 18-month limitation. If we were to pretend that the 18-month limitation didn't exist, like it used to not exist, would what that offers be sufficient for what you're looking for?
I think so. So we're re-implementing our org, and in our old org, it was current system, previous system. So I don't want 28 fields on my account. And this way, yeah, field history, that was our original thought was, yeah, let's just use field history, but 18 months limits.
Would it be sufficient enough to just, as you're getting close to that 18-month limit, archive the field history object into a custom object and then just have some kind of a persistent process that looks for what's about to age out and essentially copy or move those rows from the native history object to your custom object if what the history object has to offer is sufficient, rather than going down the route of this gnarly automation?
Possibly. I mean, the advantage of having it be automated right away is then being able to see on the related list, just like a list of systems altogether. I mean, right now they don't have, it's not like OMG need this right now because they don't have any automation. They just have previous and current system. So I'm like, this is me wanting to be adventurous.
And so that's why I'm now going to go on mute and tap out to the smarter people.
So I want to ask a follow-up question just because of the gnarly automation you're describing. So the idea being that on record change, if the field was X and now it's Y, you just want to store X, or do you need to store information about what was or what is? Like, say a little bit more about like the magic occurrence.
Yeah. So on the account record, they changed the pick list value from competitor product 1 to competitor product 2.
Okay.
I want to then have competitor product 1 stored on this custom object so that we have that history of the systems they use. Because in our business, I've been told that there is a lot of, a fair amount of like turnover from what systems people use. So that's what would happen. It would say, okay, product 1 went from account record to stored on the related record.
Okay. So the first question I have is why not just store it at the time of change versus at the time of, so sorry, what I'm saying is, so it's a brand new firm record. So you pick your product, store it right now. Don't store it when it changes to the next value. Just store every change. Now you don't have to do like a before change trigger effectively. You're just tracking every time it changes. So it would be duplicative, but only at the current moment.
Are you talking about
it
the
goes,
change history? Is that what you're saying, the change history function on the field?
No, I'm just saying, just don't even worry about the change history. Just every time you modify that pick list, store it. Not what was it, but I just changed it to this, put it in the list.
Yeah, I think that's my thought as well. Is that so if it goes from, obviously we're not going to store a blank value.
Right.
So it's not really storing the previous value as much necessarily, but matching if any one of these 14 fields changes, like if it's HR system, then on the related record in the pick list, select HR.
Sure.
So that's kind of I mean, again, I can do a massive decision
Mhm.
and do it all,
So-
but I was hoping there was a better way to do it. But I think it'll be like if it goes from blank, if it changes at all. So I guess, yeah, then you wouldn't necessarily need the previous value. Because the other thought is then to take, if you have a current system, there's a status pick list, change that from current to previous too.
So there's a couple things to consider. One, if you don't want to do anything and your company has budget, you could get the Field Audit Trail add-on for Salesforce. That's an option. The second one is if you're going to try to essentially create your own field history in a custom object, which is what you're doing, you're right, you could do it in Flow, but you're going to have a reference for every single field you want to include. And at any time that you need to change it, you're going to have keep basically adding a decision or adding, God forbid, adding a whole new flow trigger. I would take a look at it and say, would it make more sense, considering there could be, especially if it's a heavily used object that you're doing API or imports on, to actually go on the Apex route for this? Because then you could do things like build out a field set. So if they decide, hey, I need to add a new field that needs to be tracked, you can just add the field to the field set or to a custom metadata record or something like that. So once you have that code built out, you have an admin method to maintain and change what you're tracking. Because if you go to the flow route, you're going to have a whole bunch of series of decisions for every single time, and you're going to be beholden to any flow limitations.
Yeah.
And then you also start getting into a little bit of a loop as if you do it with Flow, where what if 4 of the fields change at once? You're going to create multiple records from one change in that flow. That could be a bit of a
Or
Got
you're
it.
creating a flow trigger for each field individually,
yeah.
right?
I think
And
the moral of this all might be to scrap the fields on the account and just have them use the custom object and look at the related list and put current at the top.
You mean like use the platform as designed?
If you only saw the things that there's things I'm just like, why is this a thing?
Welcome to adminning, right?
Right? Like the today field.
Stu, why don't you jump in and finish that thought? Because I think that's a good idea, by the way, where you're headed. Stuart, if you're talking, we don't hear you.
Oh, Stu. Where'd he go?
I think we lost him.
Man.
Well, he'll come back. I think he was mentioning that you might be able to use like the is change and previous val formulas to try to figure out what to load into that history record. But I think Brian, you're on the right track. Like maybe there's just a better solution overall, huh?
Manual. I just think for us and for the team that we have, the Apex route isn't currently an option. So I think the short-term solution is to say this is how, like, we're gonna, like I said, the related list and just maintaining that so we have that full history.
you could also go the route where you don't let them change the field through the object on the record directly, and you have them click basically an action which launches the flow that gives you the list of each of the fields that you would want them to be able to edit, and then you would basically go through and say if screen value is null, do nothing. If screen value has something, go create a record.
Yeah.
I mean, there's ways you can slice and dice it, but either way, if you're talking to Flow, you're still going to have to decide at one point, do I need to do something, yes or no?
Right, but it's better, a decision is better than having a decision with 14 different possible outcomes.
So let me get outside the box here on this one. How often are these values changing?
I don't know at this point. Like I said, I think they changed. I don't think it's the kind of thing where like you have Salesforce for 15 years and then decide like, okay, I'm gonna go to Oracle CRM. I think there are some that change on a, I don't know what regular basis is, but it might be the thing that it doesn't change often enough where the solution. I think the more I hear about this and the complexity of the automation, given the fact that they're doing it manual now anyways, that tracking it a little differently and doing the manual thing might just be the best way to do it.
Yeah, because I mean, again,
It's more trouble than it's worth.
Well, but at the same time, I mean, it's a balance. Is it potentially worth, before you invest the time and the energy into developing something, do you use something like the weekly data export to compare A to B to then actually capture how many changes there are to these fields to know how much to put into what that solution needs to be?
What about, just a random thought, what about sorry, I'm thinking of history tracking, but that's not what I want. But like some sort of flow that just updates your chatter feed to show the changes versus in the related list.
That's the chatter feed. That's an easy automation, but I'm not sure about reporting on that. So
Right. They'd want to see, I think at least the field, if they haven't limited the field history, I'd be golden. It's all Salesforce's fault.
Well, and you're hitting into the 20 fields per object on that kind of tracking, and 14. I mean, you're at 70% just on this one function.
Yeah, I think that the solution for now is saying this is how we're gonna have to do it, and then and that it's gonna be a little different, and they can see it this way, and I can figure out if I need to do something to make it. If it needs to be on the account page, then I think that's a different conversation to have versus saying this is the way we're gonna do it.
well, it sounds like you've got your path like carved out.
And James brings up a really good consideration in the chat for if you go down the custom object route, do you need to initialize the object with current values as well? So how much work is there to get it preloaded and primed, or are you starting from scratch at that point that you implement?
Yeah. Well, we're migrating data from our old org to the outgoing org to the new org. So we'll have to just create records either way.
Cool. So. Well, keep us updated as always.
Okay.
Like how you solve the problem.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, Brittany, the question we're dying to answer.
Knock her out.
Brittany, why don't you explain your question or your use case, because I know the chat's not available for everyone that logged in after you.
Certainly. So I have a system administrator and I have a dashboard. And when this system administrator filters for an account name on the dashboard, she is clicking to open the report and then editing it. So it's carrying over that dashboard filter into the report edit, and it's basically breaking the dashboard every time she edits it. And so I really
because she's saving it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I really just want to I wanted to build a folder that she didn't have access to and just lock her out of it somehow.
You can, but then unfortunately it's your private folder and no one can access it except you.
Well, there's also the extreme, which would be the system administrator role, the profile would need to be cloned and then remove the manage reports and dashboards, public reports and dashboards from that. And then someone else would have to manage all of those things. And you could actually have a folder that they don't have access to edit.
I guess
Go ahead, Dale.
Well, I was going to say, does this person need to be an otherwise system admin, or is this potentially just simply a training opportunity?
I've tried to explain to her that she's breaking the dashboard and she keeps breaking it.
So the other option you have is to clone those reports and dashboards and tuck them away so that you can you have the a safe, secure copy of what's going on. But you are going to be severely challenged keeping a system admin out without some extremes.
A placebo analytic.
I mean, I feel like these are good solutions, but I feel like the conversation is different. Like, if this is an admin with admin powers but doesn't understand what he or she is doing, that's a different conversation. Like, you aren't an admin if you aren't aware of the impact you're making. If it's policy change or process change or like escalation, you don't want to like rat out a cohort, but at the same time, you're breaking stuff and you're not willing to change how you're thinking about what you're doing. That's
behavioral.
Personal development thing, right?
What I would recommend doing, like in a politically correct, safe space, right, is to, when you see that this report is broken, look at that last modified by and send a note and say, hey, Jenny or Joe or whoever this person is, can you take a look at this report? There's something has been changed and it's affecting the dashboard, and send the screenshots and be like, I don't really know what you changed, because if you continue to fix it without calling it out, you're enabling the behavior. Whereas if you call out the behavior and the ripple effect that kind of goes throughout your company, they may be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was doing that. And then they have to fix their own mistake. Then they're probably more apt to be a little bit more careful with it. It might take a while though.
Okay.
And so have you ever, going to Joy's point to actually technically get into that, are you running a report on your reports to know when and who the reports are being changed by?
No, I should do that.
Yeah, super easy. It's
Custom report.
Is reports, is it out of the box, or do you have to create a custom report type?
I think you have to report that one.
But once you do that, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, but once you do that, you can create a custom report type on the reports object, which then I don't remember how to do it, but you can actually also extend to what dashboard is this report found on. And it includes the same last modifieds, all of that Joy talked about, so that you can start to get ahead of it. I always did it as an admin just to, purge reports that haven't been run in like 90 days. But if you have an issue with somebody and your report becomes data at that point, and you need clean data. You need good reports. And if they're going to start breaking downstream process, it's incumbent upon somebody to figure that out.
You can add last modified by to the report list view on the report tab. You just have to add columns.
Oh yeah.
There's a couple really good just admin best practice comments there that while we're solving this problem, like auditing your report types to see how many BS report types are still floating in your system, because you can tell how many reports are actually tied to a report type and clean those up. Last run on reports, dashboard components, all that stuff is really valuable for just keeping ahead of your org. So, I mean, let's not dance over that.
Yeah, reports are my favorite.
Now, going a little bit more advanced and technical, do you have any developers or you yourself taking any org backups like in DX, or, I mean, if Eclipse even still has the lights on, or any of those kinds of tools that actually backs up the structure of your org, the metadata?
I'm not sure if they're doing that.
Okay, if they are, and you have a clean backup, you can always take the XML file and just like plop it back into your org to restore that dashboard, rather than going through the work of redoing the reports, redoing the dashboard. I mean, it's backing up from a clean copy, but it does take a little bit of know-how to do that if you have the resources available to do it. Otherwise, yeah, you're stuck doing it by hand, restoring it back to where it was, but that's an option to think about.
Thank you. I have one more quick follow-up question then to this. So if I were to clone the sysadmin profile, like let's say she still wanted to get into setup, she still wanted to do some admin activities, do I have to give her view modify all data in order to get into setup?
in order to do something with it in setup, I think. I mean, anybody can have view setup UI and then not be able to do anything with it. But Squire, you're shaking your head. I thought you needed.
I don't believe you have to have view all, modify all data in order to interact with the setup menu.
But to actually do something with setup, not just view it.
No, I mean, you can view it. Then there's a whole thing called delegated administration. So you can have it so they don't have view modify all, but they can edit like this particular object's picklist values, as an example.
Oh,
so
is delegated admin the answer to the first question?
No, because it doesn't necessarily address like if they need to be able to edit other do other things beyond setup. Like if they're going to be,
Gotcha.
If they need to have modify all for their job.
But one of the system permissions, right, is manage public reports and dashboards. And if you clone the system admin, you can let them have everything, and then you can make the manage reports and dashboards a permission set that you apply to the folks that need to do that, and not the person who's messing everything up.
Thank you.
Who's next?
So we had Brandon, then he said he had to jump, but his question, just in case we can maybe get ahead of it, was being able to show essentially the equivalent of a pivot table in a dashboard in Lightning.
That's a matrix, right?
The matrix report, yeah. Can you actually directly show the matrix report on a dashboard?
As a table?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
see,
don't
a
think that
table
works as a lightning table.
Yeah, I feel like I just fought with this and I didn't win.
Yeah, I think the table only gives you summarized tabular tables or reports, not matrix reports, right?
Like
Two-dimensional, not
Yeah,
yeah.
one-dimensional. That's exactly
One-dimensional,
what I was
yeah.
doing.
Maybe Einstein does that.
But hold on. Oh, wow. Maybe I didn't lose that fight. Hold on a second. I can't show you my thing, but I can tell you how I did it.
I fought the law and the law won.
Kind of. Go, hit the next question and I will see what I can pull out of my other clients' work. I don't want to.
Okay. We have Jennifer Lang and time-based actions with workflow, process builder, etc. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yes. This is probably a very basic question, but I have customers who are making records in my Salesforce instance. If they haven't completed all the data, I need to trigger an email to them 24 hours later. However, if during those 24 hours, we've figured out this is a duplicate, we've added the data for them, other criteria aren't met on the record, what automation will go back and make sure the record is still worthy of getting that email?
Good question. I know it. Brian, you probably know this answer more than anybody, but in workflow rule, that scheduled task record sits there and reevaluates every time the workflow rule triggers. Does flow and process do the same thing?
My understanding is that the action is evaluated to meet the criteria at the time that it's being run again.
Okay.
So I don't know, I don't know specifically, like if you had two records, one that had a time-based action waiting for it, and then you merge the records together, what would happen to that time-based action? I think it really depends upon what is the criteria you're using on the record to determine, do you need to send something out or not? So if you had something like, there's 3 fields that must be filled. And if any of those 3 fields are not filled, then you send out the email.
Yep.
Then to not send out the email, you would have to fill in all 3 fields.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's once you do that, because the record is evaluated at the time that you update the record, then it's going through and saying, hey, do I meet that criteria or not? And then it will remove it.
Okay, so then I want to make sure would workflow just solve this if I did a workflow rule? Or do I need to move into Process Builder and evaluate the record every time it's edited and created and edited?
The way that time-based actions work between Process Builder, or Process Builder and Workflow are almost identical in both their positives and their pitfalls. The only thing that you can do differently in Process Builder is you can do other things than sending email, simple field updates, create a task type of thing. You can do, chatter posts and all the other stuff.
Yeah, I don't need
So,
any of that. I just need to trigger that email alert.
Yeah, so either way, you're going to want to do it where the criteria is evaluated upon create and edit. Otherwise, what will happen is it'll get evaluated when it's created, and then if someone edits it later down the line, it won't get reevaluated, and so the time-based action will just stay there.
Nice. Okay.
And you'll be able to test that criteria too. You could build it, trigger it so that you can look at the time-based record and then do the merge and watch it disappear or update or whatever. You'll be able to see all that in your setup side to verify it's working the way you expected.
Yeah. Who thought to actually test the damn thing?
They are a little difficult to test in a sandbox environment.
Well,
because I don't think I've ever had time-based actions actually fire in a sandbox, but they get queued.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a workflow rule, you're going to look in one place, and if you're doing a process builder, you're looking at a different place to whether or not the action's queued up.
Yep. Good. Thanks, team.
So I found the dashboard component that I had used. Oh, Brandon's back. Yes.
Awesome.
Oh, good timing. Good timing.
Insane timing. So Brandon, we actually were just talking about your question. And,
Perfect.
Your
and
question,
I'm here
not
for
you.
it.
Not
No,
you. We weren't talking
either
about
way.
you.
I'm glad I'm here for it. I'm Stu here,
so-
though. I don't want Stu here. No.
So similarly, the pivot table, similar question. I had recently created a dashboard for a client who was looking for something that looked like a pivot table, like I think like what you're saying, but the problem with pivot tables is you can have groups by 2 or 4, or you can go on for quite some time with pivot tables. The short answer is no. You don't have that kind of flexibility in
I knew
Lightning
that,
tables.
but I figured if there's a group that has a solution.
But what I was able to do is you're able to use the Lightning table with 2 groupings, and you can add a couple of measures. I'm not sure if there's a limit on the measures or not, but I was able to do that. And one of the tricky things with that in the Lightning table is there's a toggle for stacked and unstacked summary. I think that's what it's called, but I unstacked it and then it kind of spread it out a little bit easier to read. And so the measures were in separate columns instead of having like 4 different measures in a box.
Could you show that? Because I know that you can do 2 dimensions now, and if you can't, that's fine.
I can't really show it to you because it's for a client's
That's
thing,
fine.
but I can find something and circle back.
Because I know you can do a couple different dimensions. The problem is for me, it's all vertical versus like horizontal. So,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah.
So like you've got the matrix and that works fine, but you can't put it on a dashboard. That's what you're getting at.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And it almost ties into the previous question I was sitting on too, because we're taking 4 metrics for measuring what we're calling sales velocity. And if anybody's had experience with sales velocity and has a good idea there, let me know. But it's basically 4 metrics. It's opportunities created in the month, the average order value of anything closed won that month, the win rate of those, and the age of those. So you're kind of mixing a little bit of, even though they're opportunities, they're different angles. And so I think I'm going to just take the data, dump it into a custom object that I track kind of velocity on a month-to-month basis to kind of report that out. I might even just figure out a way to take a snapshot of it and display it as a visual force page somewhere. I don't know.
Snapshot reporting.
Why not just 4 components on the dashboard?
Oh, well, and if you want, I'll share my screen. You can see what it looks like because
Please.
I don't have a ability to do that, but I'm sure somebody can take care of that for me.
I will do my best to help with that. 1 second. Hold on. Please hold.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I always feel like everybody's like, oh, just put it in a pivot table. It's like, yeah, I know. That's great. you know.
You just wanted to show us your retro video games again.
Well, you guys.
This has absolutely nothing to do with Salesforce. It's all
Well,
the background.
And I do have a Raspberry Pi here. I'm still working on for another one, but I just, you know, not enough time because I got to get this stuff in a pivot table. So,
And if the call goes a little dead, I got something about that for you, but just wait.
So you can see here, hopefully you can see my screen. Here's kind of the data, right? Here's the ops created, and here's this. And all of this is coming from, I got to find the right one here. Here we go. So this, and I'll make it bigger, are kind of all the metrics. So here's the new logos, here's the ops created. And so I kind of want to mash them all together because when you do that, you get this number that says whether you're trending up or down, you know, and then you can do a fun chart like this. But this chart looks horrible, of course, like COVID's had an impact. So anyways, that makes sense?
Yeah, so I mean, so to say it back to you, so you need that fifth calculation from the 4 graphs that you also want to plot.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think personally, I think your idea of a snapshot is probably the best way to do that. We did something similar with trying to calculate IRR on our investment opportunities. And we've got very similar tables and graphs. And it just came down to that IRR calculation was too painful to try to force through the matrix. And so we do a snapshot and calculate it and just plot it.
Yeah, the only problem is too, I've got to figure out a way to apply some dimensions to this too, because we've got, you know, like by user counts here and by segments. And so it's not as easy as it looks. But
yeah.
You know, anyways, so that's what I figured. I always bring like stuff that I couldn't figure out. And so this group's usually awesome. Like, and usually what happens is like, nope, you've done your share. You know what you're doing. So
there's that product, that Einstein Analytics.
So we had that. Oh my gosh, when we first had, you know, because we got a free license or something, they're like, so you need to train the machine to do this and do that. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then our data model on our opportunity is not so good. The consulting firm that set this up didn't use the standard fields for things like type. So, yeah. No, I appreciate you guys just hearing me on this because at least I can say, yeah, this is really tough. So I'm going to work around. So makes sense.
I mean, I think a lot of the old school admins, snapshots was kind of designed to fix this problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
If you knew you didn't need to go change historical data, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm actually doing snapshots for our historical pipeline too, because, you know, like Salesforce can only go 3 months back. So there's like, all right, take a picture of it every month. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I've been using opportunity trends, which I found the other day that was, I found it better than the snapshot we have going on for opportunities. So
but you can only go back so long, right? Or so far. Is that correct or not?
I think so. But our work's less than a year old, so.
Oh, good for you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good luck with it.
Yep.
So really quick, Brandon, since we don't have any hands raised or any other questions in the queue, I lost the link to it, but on Etsy, there's a guy in Florida who takes a Raspberry Pi, every video game ever made going all the way back to like late 70s, early 80s, Atari Commodore, all the way through like Wii.
Andrea's got the guy behind her. I think he's the one that posted on Etsy.
Okay.
And no, I kid you not, in my living room, we have a full-size arcade cabinet that he built that is run on a Raspberry Pi. I don't know how far back it goes, but it's every arcade game ever made.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you can't see it.
But you can guess how often he uses it.
The third thing back there is actually a Pi with, I think I've got probably like 800 ROMs loaded on it. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, because I was gonna say, this guy in Florida, he will build the cabinet. Whatever you want it to look like, he'll program the Raspberry Pi, and for less than $1,000, as long as you are willing to wait for a logical delivery run, because he ships them in the back of his truck, and he just needs to get a good logical route. As long as you're waiting for that, less than $1,000 and you're set. One of the guys I work with just finished his basement, and that's like his centerpiece is that. So less than $1,000. It's somewhere on
It's
Etsy.
cheaper to buy the MDF and everything, and the plexi and the time and effort and the controls. It's cheaper to buy it all than it is to buy the pieces than to like buy a finished arcade.
Yeah,
You
we've
have
got
to
Micro
know how
Center
to
here.
assemble it, which I don't.
Yeah, we have Micro Center here that'll do it. Plus, you can buy the arcade one-ups and just hack them too. But looks like somebody has a question about splits, which is funny because we do that as well. And however, we're doing ACV calculation without CPQ. So I'm always like, split questions are great. I'm kind of curious now.
Yeah, it's only 1:45. Mike, you want to unmute yourself? And
Mike and Dora both have questions, so let's see if we can squeeze them in.
there's also a question from Darren. If you go back up to 141, holy cow, all the questions came in as soon as we started talking about video games.
That's
So Mike, why don't you go ahead and then Dara will come back.
And there are no dumb questions. Whoever put that in there.
Yeah.
What?
No, on splits, real quick. The validation rule will work on the split object. It will stop users from saving a record, but the validation rule does not present, and that's kind of annoying because a user doesn't know why he couldn't save a record. From the documents I got from Salesforce, that is how the object functions. So I thought, no problem. I'll just write a short Visualforce script that has an alert. It says, hey, I'm going to bypass the message. Yeah, I don't know how to get to that screen.
So, I mean, I'm going back to 101 here. Traditionally, validation rules, you have the option for them to appear at the top of the screen or on a field.
Mm-hmm.
Is that different with splits?
The documentation I've been given says yes. That object is not built that way.
Gotcha.
It's special.
So are activities, but we have
And
millions of those in
leaves.
all our orgs.
Are you able to create a toast pop-up? Are you in Lightning, first of all?
Yes, I am.
Are you able to create a toast pop-up that fires on save rather than a validation?
Have not tried that.
Because instead of, it would be more contextual, it'd be in the page you're acting on that says, you can't do that. You can put it in red or even put a kind of picture up, but maybe that would be the better workaround than the Visualforce pop-up.
There's also in-app guidance.
Okay, that'll work.
You could consider flexing. It might not be a great repetitive use case, but it might be a learning thing. Like if you have problems saving and there's no apparent reason, this is it.
Yeah, that would work. And Squire, a toast, TOAST?
Yeah, so you know how generally speaking, when you save something, you get that little green drop down that looks like a piece of toast dropping out of a toaster.
Yep.
That's a standard component that I think you can reference from your. You'd have like an on save trigger or before save trigger that runs, and you could have it stop the save and then drop that toast and say, I'm pretty sure you can do it that way.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll give it a shot. Thanks. Who's next?
Dara.
Hello.
Yes,
Hi there.
go ahead.
So I'm kind of nervous. This is my first time here. And I'm a newly certified admin, so I'm extra nervous.
Yes, congratulations. Way to go.
I actually passed in July. So
that's good. That's awesome.
So, anyway, so we have an org that I've inherited, which is probably the case for everybody, and it's pretty much a mess. But we have two separate sales divisions, and I need to sort of split the database so that they can't see across, but some of the accounts overlap. So I need to be able to, some of the reps don't want the reps from the other side seeing what they're doing, but we need to be able to, we don't want to duplicate accounts and we don't want to duplicate contacts because some of them reach out to the same people, but they don't want to know that the other people are being reached out to by their counterparts. So I'm not sure the best way to do that. We're on professional, so I know that limits some of the things that we can do.
So I guess my question is, I want to ask a clarifying thing, where you said, do you want to be able to say we have 3 sets of accounts? First set is for group A, second set is for group B, third set is people for group A and B? Or is it's okay for everyone to see what the accounts are and who the contacts are, but we don't want to see group B, group A doesn't want to see group B's opportunities and activities underneath that and vice versa?
Yes, all of the above.
Okay, then the
so-
answer is
Yes.
you got a royal pain on the backside
Right.
for you.
Well,
'Cause
part
so-
of it, I think, is like attitudes amongst the team people. Like they get a
Yeah.
little possessive about things, and that's an issue we recognize, and
so
that's a separate issue. So we have some that overlap. We have some that are only ever going to be this one, some that are only ever going to be this one.
Mhm.
We have some that are
So-
going to be both.
So that first
So-
scenario where you basically have 3, that's actually easy.
Okay.
With professional, you're talking about essentially making all the accounts private in the
Okay.
org-wide sharing model, and then creating sharing rules that says if the account meets this criteria, then it's just for A. If it meets that criteria, it's B. And you can do that based on who's owning the account. You can do that based off of criteria on the account.
Okay.
If you can do it by ownership, that's ideal.
Okay.
And then that would be your primary to basically say that gets skewed group A and group B. And then you'll need another one that does something that identifies the accounts that are shared between both of them.
Mm-hmm.
To say, and if it's shared by both of them, then share with both groups.
Okay.
And, I've seen people do that with something as simple as just a pick list that's managed by like the managers or the admin, simply because there will be situations, I would imagine, if you're like any other PE org I've worked with, where you say if it's this user, then it's shared with groups A and B, except for in these scenarios, and then you can't just use ownership in your sharing rules.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's
So-
what I would suggest. But for the ones where people can both see things,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to decide, well, what specifically do you not want them to see? Because if they do something like, I put an activity on a contact, and that contact is visibly visible to both groups,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just on that contact, the activity is going to show in the activity list.
Right.
Right. If you're doing things like all the other records that are associated with the accounts are also considered private, and you mirror the same sharing rules, you can reduce the amount of information they can see a little bit from there, but you're still going to have plenty of overlap when you start talking about activities.
Right.
Not unless someone else got a good idea to try to work in PE when you really don't have access to much of anything.
Right. So, and again, I'm sorry if I'm asking you to repeat something you said earlier. Like when it comes to actual ownership, like the issue we're having is you can't have more than one owner, right? So
Yeah.
how do you, like the way I set it up is this really crappy ad hoc thing where it's like, you've got an owner, but then you have a co-owner,
Yeah.
like a custom co-owner field that you give them everybody can edit anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Is that it?
I
Is
know
that the
exactly
best it gets?
when you're in PE, you don't have much of a choice because you don't have
Right.
access to account teams. You don't
Okay.
have access to territories. So some of the things I've seen are you have a primary owner, which is like all accounts for Group A are always owned by this person in Group A. All the accounts in Group B are owned exclusively by this person in Group B. And then you can have other lookups that identify, hey, this is the person who's whatever within Group A and Group B, like the co-salesperson or the account manager or whatever the case may be. But look at it in the terms of, do you need that reference there to control who's able to see and edit a record if they're within the same group? Or is it more of, you want to get people a way to say, show me my accounts, right? Where are the accounts that I'm involved with? And that's because that's a completely different setup.
Yeah.
If it's along the lines of what people need to control and edit, then yeah, you're talking about creating sharing rules within the group to be able to say if this criteria is this, then share with that. And I will tell you, I wouldn't recommend doing it that way to the user, because you will go, it's a sharing rule hell is really what it is.
Okay.
If you can say everyone in Group A can see and edit everything in Group A, all the accounts in Group A, that's a lot simpler.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to be able to say, hey, I'm Squire and I need to see Squire's accounts, one of the things you can do is if you have that lookup field and it's the co-owner, you can create a formula field that basically says, is the current user is that ID in that field, or is that ID in the owner field? And if so, evaluate the true. And then your list of views and your reports will basically say, show me all the accounts where that field is true.
Gotcha.
And that way, if Squire logs in and Dale logs in and Joy logs in, it's going to evaluate true for different records and give them a different list. It will slow your system down a little bit if you go crazy with doing that. I usually don't recommend doing it on more than one object. And
Okay.
if you have hundreds of thousands of accounts, you'll notice a difference.
No.
If
we
you're
should be
talking
fine.
about a couple thousand, it's
Yeah, no, we're good there. And we're not a huge team, so in that regard, maybe it's good because it's, we're not talking thousands of people. So, and can that be done by like public groups? Like the ones that because I already have them set up for certain things, or is that a completely different?
Well, so like the trick with the public group is that you end up getting in a loop of having to constantly monitor them. But if they're hard set, like the example I would give, building on what Brian was saying, was we have accounts where there's certain checkboxes that say that like this is in the energy sector, this is in the tech sector, this is the medical sector, and then there's a group that represents that as well.
Okay.
And so then if the checkbox is checked, it shares it with the medical group. And then we
Gotcha.
can just say it's shared to A, but not to B. And then
Gotcha.
that's fine, except that once you hit about, well, I don't know what the number would be, but if that's a real dynamic group of salespeople that are moving sectors and stuff like that, that's like a full-time job to keep it running.
Right. Okay.
The sharing rules have to keep recalculating every time you change it. But if you've got a pretty set in stone sales team and defining characteristics, that might work.
Okay.
Brian, I mean, going back to your comment, is that a concern, you think, or?
I've done it. It works. It's still a royal pain to manage.
Okay.
The best thing you can do if you're going to go down the route is document the crap out of it and make sure it's widely available for a couple reasons. One, if you decide to go to a different place, then that information's there. And two, I will guarantee you in 6 months you will forget the details. And when you have some turnover where someone leaves or joins the company, you have to go through and remember, I have to make sure I add into this and this and this, because when you're in PE, you really don't have a lot of the security controls that you can get when you're in enterprise. You basically have profiles of permission set, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so adding on to both Squire and Brian with the documentation, definitely include a flow chart in there with the decisions of if part of this group, yes or no, if you're the owner versus the co-owner, yes, no, something visual to supplement the written documentation, just because it can get really hairy fast. And going back to Brian's comment about PE hell, as a fellow graduate of a PE org, no solution you put in will be crappy. You are working with the best that you have, which is not much, and we have been there, so you are in a safe place.
Well, if I thought it was worth the expense for our little tiny team to upgrade, I would suggest it, because there are a lot of issues that I'm running up against, and I'm like, this would be great, except I can't do that. So I don't know. And we may get to that point. It may be that I say I can't. This is as good as it gets, and and they.
So document those things as much as you can. Start making a wish list with an ROI. It's not a cost, it's an investment.
Right. And I can tell you that there will be a time as you are growing where the pain of being on PE is going to be the technical debt you're going to inherit.
Right.
Because you have to do some creative things in PE to get things to work sometimes. It won't be worth it to the company at some point, because it'll be sucking more and more of your time from doing other beneficial things.
And I'm already coming up against that. So.
Yeah, running up the list, like, hey, we can't do record types, and this is what the benefit of doing that is. And
yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
Welcome to MVP office hours.
Thank you.
Is that it? Is that all the questions?
I don't think I've seen anything else.
Is it a holiday weekend?
Bueller?
Is the moon full?
We threw everyone off by going on a fourth Friday.
Yeah, that's right. Jennifer, really quick, do you have like comfort with Proton Toast? Do you want to speak to that really quick?
Proton Toaster, I just saw the demo of it, and I know the maker founder is Pat McClellan, from the Proton group. He does the Proton Text and Proton Blaster. But Proton Toaster allows you, it's $17 a month for nonprofits, and I think it's like $25 a month for regular businesses. And it allows you to customize your toast messages and their stickiness. So it could pop up for 3 seconds and go away. It could stay there until dismissed. You can tell it what to display in the message and what clickable links there are. You can create them for many, many, many objects. They're made through a process builder. So he just demoed it for us in the Charlotte admin office, or Charlotte admin user group. And we literally just watched it about an hour ago.
Do you know, Jennifer, is that per user or per org?
Oh, it's per org. Yeah, it's just.
Thank goodness.
It makes a big difference. I mean,
Oh, huge. Yeah.
I mean, you know, so Mike, if you're, you know, if the stuff doesn't work, I think this would be a really great solution, because, you know, the folks want their money, the split ops.
Pat's really, really approachable, and like he answers my emails within 15 minutes. He's great. Small business.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Good. I like it.
Okay.
No more questions? We're all done? Oh, my goodness.
Maybe for the first time in months, we might be done on time. Would that
No, I'll answer. I'll ask a question.
All right, well, I gotta go. Brian, you're gonna be muted.
All right.
I'm so glad everyone made it today, though. That was great to see everyone.
I'm serious. I have a question.
Okay, go
Oh,
ahead.
Brian, yes.
Time-based actions and workflow, your schedule actions. If you have something that says fire in 10 days, you have a whole bunch of records that apply, and then you edit the schedule to say 20 days. Does the 20 days get applied retroactively to the records that have already been scheduled for your 10 days?
My gut says no.
My gut
Mine
says no, too.
Well, wait. Are you saying you're changing the flow itself?
Yeah. Think process builder to say, hey, fire everything in 10
Yeah.
days, and then you go, oh, someone said, hey, no, you need 20, so you change the 20. Does it? If you go
I don't
back
think so,
and
because
reapply,
no, because I think the scheduled job queue gets locked in at
that's what I'm thinking.
when
too.
it was initiated. Do it 10 days later, and there's no retroactive updates to
That's what I
the
was
scheduled
thinking.
job queue.
But you can hack those records and update them if you
Yep.
want to do it manually.
All of them, all of the records, all
Yes.
million
Mhm.
of them.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to identify those records from the list.
Nice. All right.
Oh, I have a question about duplicates. No, I'm kidding.
I gotta go. Especially
This is good.
Let's
Thank you, guys.
look at contacts with related accounts.
Oh yeah, we got that.
That'll be another day. Well,
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. It was good to
Thank you,
see
everyone.
Have a
you.
Thank
good
you.
weekend,
Recording will
everyone.
be
Be
posted
well.
soon. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Righty.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
More fun.
Bye.
Bye
Bye.
all.
See everybody.
Bye. I'm glad you were here, Brian.